Welcome to Daily Dose Radio, a 5-minute devotional podcast studying the Psalms verse by verse. Broadcast from the ever-beautiful Sharonville, Ohio, on the sunny side of Cincinnati. Hey, welcome back to Daily Dose Radio. This is your home for artisanal Bible study. Listen, we make this fresh for you every single day. We want you to enjoy 5 minutes of Bible study going through the Psalms verse by verse. That's what Daily Dose Radio is all about. Now, last week we looked at the first half of Psalm 102. This week we're going to look at the second half beginning in verse 15. And the second half of Psalm 102 is different than the first. The first half is a prayer of complaint, lament, confession, contrition. It is a prayer of the destitute soul to its God. This half is a hymn of praise to God. And we'll see some elements from the first half reappear here, but then there's some things that are just absolutely unique to this psalm, and we'll find that portions of this psalm are found in the New Testament, especially this week in the second half. So we'll get to that as we move along here, but let me read for you today verses 15 through 17. So the heathen shall fear the name of the Lord, and all the kings of the earth thy glory. When the Lord shall build up Zion, he shall appear in his glory. He will regard the prayer of the destitute, and not despise their prayer. So that's verses 15 through 17. The heathen shall fear the name of the Lord. Now we've seen that before in other psalms, that the Lord's name eventually, this is future tense now, in the future tense, the heathen are going to fear the name of the Lord. We've seen that happen now in history, in periods of history. It doesn't last forever. And all the kings of the earth, now we've seen particular kings of the earth in history fear the name of the Lord. And we've seen some of the heathen fear the name of the Lord. But we haven't seen all the kings of the earth bowing before him. That will happen, however, because we know that at the end of days, all of them are going to come to Jerusalem. All of them are going to pay tribute. All of them are going to bow before the Lord. All of them are going to recognize him as God. That will happen. And it's going to happen on a national level like this, with the kings coming and nations bowing. But let me ask you this question. What about you? Have you bowed before the Lord? Have you feared the name of the Lord? Have you exalted in the glory of the Lord? When the Lord shall build up Zion, he shall appear in his glory. That, of course, is that day, the day of the Lord, when he comes back. And he sets up Zion and appears in his glory there in the New Jerusalem. Yes, we can go to the book of Revelation and find that very thing happening. When the kings of the earth come, they shuttle themselves into Zion and appear before the God of all creation, and they give him the glory that's due his name. But again, what about you? And then we have verse 17. He will regard the prayer of the destitute and not despise their prayer. Do you remember what we had at the very beginning? I probably drilled this one into your brain, because I was all the time talking about verse 2. Hide not thy face from me in the day when I am in trouble. Incline thy ear unto me in the day when I call. Answer me speedily. That's verse 2. And here we have the promise in regards to that. The day when I'm in trouble, or the day when I'm, destitute, or that's a good translation for that. Here's the promise in 17. He will regard the prayer of the destitute and not despise their prayer. So the Lord's going to hear. He's going to answer. And the psalmist gives us the question or the prayer in verse 2, and then we have the promise and the answer here in verse 17. The Lord will. He's not going to hide his face. The Lord will hear, and the Lord will answer. He won't despise your prayer, because you're making it in faith. You're trusting the Lord. Two things then quickly. Are you ready, or have you glorified the name of the Lord? Have you bowed before him in fear of his name? And have you captured this promise of verse 17 for your praying? Your praying needs to be based on promise. And here it is. He will regard the prayer of the destitute. And who is that? That's you and I, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you'll join me tomorrow as we look at verses 18 through 20 on Daily Dose Radio. Thanks for listening to Daily Dose Radio. I'm David Smith. The music today has been performed by the Bluegrass Experiment. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time on Daily Dose Radio.